Mariano Gomez, the Dynamics GP blogster here. In part 1 of the series, I showed you the different elements that go into building a numeric up and down control with a persisted button press. Now we're going to put all that knowledge together to just walk through a simple scenario on how we would actually make this component reusable. For that, we're taking advantage of the new components feature, and remember, components is an experimental feature that you need to enable in your app settings. So if you go to the advanced settings in your app, you want to make sure that the components feature is enabled. When you do this, when you do enable components, it actually introduces a new tab under the tree view that basically allows you to build your component. As you can see here, I have the actual numeric up and down control, which I've laid out on the surface, on the design surface, and I want to show you how we did some of that. The principles are the same from my previous video. I'm going to set a link down so you can go and review that before you actually can go through here. And if you have not had a chance to view that video, just make sure you click on it, go through it. It explains clearly all the different principles into building the numeric up and down controller. So we already have one here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of the properties here. For example, I'm just going to make this a little taller so we can see what are the different elements here. The same thing will apply. We have a timer. That timer, I've actually hidden that timer, so the timer no longer is visible in the entire design surface or for the end user experience. But what you can see here is that I've actually added some of the same properties, and those same properties come from the different component inputs that I have created for this particular control. So the idea here is that you can set up a sensitivity, which we talked about before, that will basically allow the timer to be allow the control to be smooth in its transition between each number value, or as aggressive as we want. So you can set the control to move faster or slower based on that sensitivity. You also have the ability to set up a min and a max value for this particular control and a default starting value for it. So a couple of the things that we've done here is, if you highlight the text input, the same numeric value text input control, you will notice that we've specified a simple formula that will run it, that will basically set the initial default value based on the user input to this control. Now we can see that from a timer perspective. So for example, if we look at the timer itself, the timer retains the same values. So we've assigned the sensitivity. If you look at the on start, we are actually defining which button press event we are capturing, and remember that this timer will only start if button up or button down are pressed. Any of these things will trigger that on timer start event, where we evaluate exactly which button has been pressed and increment the numeric value accordingly. Okay, so the other thing here is on timer end, we've introduced the ability to evaluate then if we've reached the max value or the min value, and if so, just persist the max or the min based on the user input for the control. Okay, so that's how we actually allow that timer or this particular control to reach an upper boundary and a lower boundary and never pass those surpass those values. All right. Really, the only additional thing I've done here is I've added some cosmetics, and the buttons have actually been hidden that way and superimposed on the icons, and that way we actually get the feeling or the sensation that those buttons are doing something based on the icons that we have created. or have added to the control. But simply what we're doing here is no different than what we've done before. So we're basically saying that if the numeric value has reached the maximum, then we just or if the value of the numeric value, the text input is greater than the upper limit, then we just set it to the maximum amount, and vice versa with the down icon or the down button. That's what we're doing. The timer, however, is, as you know, evaluating to ensure that the values that we're entering are incremented or decremented based on that sensitivity level. So at that point, we haven't really done anything different. The one thing to keep in mind here is from a numeric control perspective, this is all a part of a component. So you can improve on this component by adding things like the width or the height of the numeric control. You can pass those in as custom properties. Again, this is not a video that where I'm going to talk about components themselves or what the meaning of components is, but I will set some links beneath so you can actually go and read about this component feature. And in fact, MVP Shane Young has a intro video on components as well that I can direct you to. Also, my good friend and fellow MVP Daniel Christian also has a couple of videos on components. I'll be posting those for you so you can help yourself to watching those videos and get a little bit more insight as to how components are defined and the meaning of components. The good thing though is once you have the basics down, once you have all the elements, you can then go back and look at the screen itself, where I've created a test harness for this particular component. So I'm passing in the sensitivity through a slider, so nothing different than what we did in the last video. And perhaps the only other elements that you are seeing here that are slightly different from my past video is I've actually introduced the ability to set a min and a max value for this component. So if we execute here, and by the way, remember that the component menu will also appear on the toolbar, and you can set you will see the numeric up and down control listed based on how we defined it in the components screen. So here's a numeric up and down. That's what we name our component. And here in screens, I would go to components and select that numeric up and down. The good thing though is once you start introducing that element, note that you basically can add a complete structure that becomes a part of your application. So I really like the fact that that components do allow for this atomic unit of elements that we call a component control. So that's super awesome. It's something that I encourage you to explore as much as you can in your applications. So if you find yourself doing those things, those same things, or those adding those same controls, or trying to design things that are repetitive in nature, explore the use of components in order to get to bypass that repetitive task, and then you can reuse those things in your application. So now I'm just going to show you how this works in general. I can put in a max value here of just 50. We're not going to go over that. We're going to introduce a sensitivity of 500 milliseconds. So if you see how that works, and I can persist now, you can see that the values are basically incrementing on a 500 millisecond rate. If I bring this down to 200 milliseconds, then this speed is going to be a little better. It all depends the type of user experience that you're trying to transmit and or to provide to the end user of your component. And I do encourage you also to try and publish your components in the component gallery, in the Power Apps component gallery. So I'm going to set a link to the Power Apps component gallery as well for you to take a look at and get some ideas. Why not? You can then based on those same ideas that you've retrieved, build your own, improve some of the controls that are there, and republish them hopefully to the apps gallery. So I do have quite a bit of information to add to this video, and I'll make sure that you guys get the best of it. I hope you found this series interesting. I hope you found it useful. And if you actually have any questions, please don't hesitate to add them to the comment section of this video. Thank you for watching. Have a great time.